Good evening, Takoma Park. I'm Rob DeSpirito, and I'm very honored to be your city manager. Thank you for joining this budget community forum this evening. Tonight, my staff and I would like to first share a little information with you about the process for the city to develop the next city budget, which we will refer to as fiscal year 2027. But most importantly, we're here to listen to your comments and ideas and to try to answer any questions that you may have. This is very early in the budget process, and staff have not yet produced a draft document. Therefore, all of this input from you will be very valuable to us, and when we first hosted this budget forum a year ago. I am pleased that each of my department directors are in attendance, as well as our finance and budget team. It's essential for all of us to hear what you have to say. There will also be many other opportunities for you to be heard before the fiscal year 2027 budget is released, as we will host several budget public hearings in the coming months, and there is always the public comments portion of our weekly council meetings. And hey, if you're among the 360 residents who recently participated in our community budget survey, I'd like to send a special thank you for taking your valuable time to help us. We got a very strong response, just like last year, when we first surveyed our residents about the budget. Our city budget covers the period from July 1st to June 30th each year. My staff and I craft a proposed budget between now and the end of next March, when I present it to the community and council. Next, we follow with a series of council meetings where there are presentations by all the departments, work sessions with the council, public hearings, and budget reconciliation sessions with the City Council, who ultimately adopt their preferred version in mid-May. Tonight's meeting will be all virtual in an effort to reach a broader range of our residents. We're happy to hear you speak, or if you prefer, you may post your questions or comments in the chat. If you would like to speak, then please use the raised hand option, and you will be unmuted in turn. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the city website so that it's accessible to those who can't join us this evening. Please try to be as concise as possible in your comments so everyone gets at least one chance. And remember, this is a family-friendly program. You are welcome to speak more than once, but please try to let others have an opportunity first if you've already spoken. Besides me, our panel this evening includes Finance Director Susan Chung, Budget and Accounting Manager Ron Kowali, Deputy City Managers David Eubanks and Asmara Apti. We have a few slides to share first to provide you with some basic information that might be helpful in tonight's conversation. So let's proceed to the second slide. Tonight's goals: sharing information about the budget. We'd like to provide some baseline information that we think will be helpful to all of you. Public engagement. The core part of this meeting is for you to have an opportunity to ask some questions, offer your ideas, provide input. And for those things that we cannot answer this evening, we hope to be able to do some follow-up with you. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and available on the city's website. Next slide, please. I'd like to present a little bit of an idea of the sequence, the process that the mayor and council and staff go through in working hand in glove with the community to create the next fiscal year budget for the city. So for fiscal year 2027, the budget process is as follows. The key dates: this evening, of course, the Community Budget Forum. This Wednesday, November 19th, Council will receive a presentation from a consultant that we have to deliver results of the community and council budget surveys, as well as a presentation by a consultant on financial revenue forecast. In December, Council sets annual budget goals and priorities. January through March, the city manager and senior leadership, we build the budget, a proposed budget. Mid-February, the constant yield rate is received from the state. That's for real property. March 25th is the target date for me to present a draft budget to the mayor and council and community. Throughout March and then into April, we'll have department presentations publicly in work sessions at council meetings. In April, we'll have a number of public hearings and work sessions and budget reconciliation discussions by the mayor and council. In May, council adopts a budget for FY 2027 and sets the tax rates. That's generally by mid-May. And July 1st, next year, 2026, the new fiscal year begins anew. How are your city tax dollars spent? This illustration provides a little bit of information for you about where the emphasis is. 30%, as you can see, is whoops, I'm sorry, could you slide back? There we go. Okay. With the legend to the right, you can see that we've got among the largest users of city tax dollars is the police department. We also have public works, general government, housing and community development. We also have some monies for capital outlay, recreation, communications, the library, multi-departmental expenditures, and also debt service. Those are all the proportions in which the current FY 26 general fund expenditures are by activity. In the current fiscal year 2026 budget, this illustrates our combined revenues by fund. At the top, it indicates that the combined revenues for the city are approximately $38 million. The majority of that is general fund, 84%. But we also have expenditures. We also have revenues that come from the Stormwater Management Fund. 2% of our revenues come from that. Special revenue funds, 6%. The Speed and Red Light Camera Fund provides 7% of the revenues for the city. And the American Rescue Plan Act fund ARPA is 1%. That's some of the remaining balance. So again, we just wanted to illustrate where revenues, what is the wellspring for revenues to the city for operations and capital. Okay, next slide, please. For the current fiscal year 2026 budget, combined expenditures by type. Total expenditures are approximately, it's over $40 million. This is comprised of personnel, which is about 58% of our expenditures. Supplies is 3%, services and charges 19%, debt service 1%, miscellaneous 4%, and capital outlay is 15%. In the general fund, revenues as they relate to the real property tax. I just want to take a moment to walk through this because this is very fundamental to how estimations are made for the vast majority of revenue that comes to the general fund, which is through the real property tax. All real property within the corporate limits of Takoma Park is subject to real property tax. The State Department of Assessments and Taxations, or SDAT, reassesses real property every 3 years, and tax bills are based on those assessments. Increases in assessed value are phased in over a 3-year period. Increases are capped at 10% per year, even if that takes more than 3 years. Pursuant to Maryland law, the constant yield tax rate is calculated by the state for each taxing authority. It represents the property tax rate that will generate the same amount of revenue generated during the previous year. As assessments increase, the constant yield tax rate decreases. While a taxing authority plans to impose a tax rate that is higher than the constant yield tax rate, it must advertise the increase and hold a public hearing. The city council sets the tax rate, and the tax rate for current fiscal year 26 is 0.5522 per $100 of assessed valuation. And these slides will be posted and available. Folks can go back and look at those. We can also come back to these. Once we finish the presentation, we'll come back for questions and comments. Be happy to do that. And again, these will be available on the website as well. This illustration is the historical assessed value of real property. So over a period of time from fiscal year 2012 to current fiscal year 2026, the chart below tracks the total value of real estate property that the city levies real property tax on from FY12 to FY26. So it's over the period of time from FY 2012, it was almost $2 billion in assessed value. Now it's over $3 billion in assessed value in the current year. This chart illustrates the historical general fund revenues, real property. The chart below tracks the city's revenue. Oops. Ryan, I've lost the screen. There we go. Historical general fund revenues, real property. The chart below tracks the city's revenue. Could you go back one? It tracks the city's revenue property from real property from FY17, 12 million to FY26, 17 million. So it'll show, again, in the chart, in 2017, the actual was approximately 12 million, and current year, 17 million in terms of revenues derived from real property. So in forecasting the fiscal year 2027 budget, doing a look ahead, my staff and I have to take in a lot of considerations, including what are the challenges, what are the expenses, what type of, how are we tracking with revenues, what do we have to work with in order to meet the mayor and council's goals and priorities and the community's goals and priorities in a new fiscal year budget. So some of the factors, some of the challenges that we need to contend with are, in no particular order, inflationary increases to operating expenses beyond the city's control, ongoing collective bargaining process with 2 city unions. The city has just begun a new round of negotiations with our 2 labor unions. We're just in the process of completing 2 3-year agreements with ASME and Local 400. And so we ultimately have a negotiation process that will go into next year. And at this point, with unknown financial implications. Ongoing employee classification and compensation study. This is a study the city does every 3 or 4 years to make sure that compensation for city employees is competitive in the market so that we don't lose employees and that we can attract employees, and likewise that we don't have internal inequities that should be corrected. Expected significant increases in employee health care costs. I think we've all heard recently how the expense of healthcare is expected to rise significantly in the coming year or so. So we're keeping a close eye on that, but we have to plan for potential significant increases in that. Cable grant annual revenue. That continues to decline. These are monies that we get through the county each year, but due to a declining number of subscriptions and use of cable as a media source, the commensurate revenues have declined. So we continue to track that in conjunction with the county. Stormwater. We have stormwater challenges in this community, of course. The program we are technically underfunded in relation to identified projects. So it's always a challenge to try to generate the funds necessary to address the most serious stormwater problems in the community. Speed camera program is discontinued due to driver compliance, and we really don't expect any revenue for next year. The cost to maintain the program exceeds the revenue that has been coming in, and so speed camera program is going to go away. But the good news is that that's primarily due to the fact that drivers are slowing down. The speed camera program was successful in that it got drivers' attention, at least those that speed, and we have much greater compliance as evidenced by many fewer citations and the revenue that comes from that. Red light camera program. This is relatively new. Staff is monitoring the revenues. We're still in the process of having some additional cameras installed, working in conjunction with SHA. But this is a revenue source, but we aren't to a point where we have complete confidence in the amount of revenues in terms of what we're projecting. And we'll continue to watch it closely, and that could be something that is helpful in the long run. ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, funds will be fully expended by December 31st of 2026 as required by the federal treasury. All cities that received ARPA funds about 4 years ago are in the same situation where monies had to be technically committed by last year and must be expended by the end of next year. So we'll have relatively little left to work with in FY27. State highway user revenue, potentially at risk. Each year we want to make sure, and through MML, the mayor and council work very hard to advocate to the state that municipalities like Takoma Park continue to receive highway user revenue to help maintain our infrastructure, and that dollar amount is not, the formula is not changed such that we would receive lesser revenue from the state. And finally, possibly declining income tax revenue due to federal layoffs. And of course, we all know that sadly, many folks in our community have lost their positions this past year, but there's also reverberations throughout the community with others that worked, say, contractors and others that worked with the federal government. We are watching extremely closely the receipts for income tax, and we're trying to be very conservative in estimating what revenue we might derive from income tax in the coming year, because we're extremely mindful of the impact, first of all, to people, but secondarily, it does have a impact to the city with respect to its revenue. So that's part of what we must track. So at this point, I think I've covered some basic information, a little bit of look ahead there with the challenges, and we would be very pleased to begin to entertain questions or comments from you, the public. So we have some folks that have raised hand, and my staff are going to be managing the folks that will come on to speak. as well as those that are in the chat.
Hey, Rob, I'm sorry. I think you missed this slide. Hey, Rob, can you hear me?
So Ryan or Jesse, do you have some
Yep. Yeah, sorry,
master
Rob.
speakers for us, please?
Rob, can you? Hey, Rob, I think you missed this sixth slide. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah. Ryan, I'm not hearing anything on my end.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, Ryan,
Yeah,
we can
can
hear
you hear
you.
me?
I will.
Okay.
Let's go on to
Okay.
questions, and we'll try to get Rob's computer working.
Okay, awesome. So I have Mary's iPad up first and is unmuted to speak.
Hello? Something's the matter. I haven't been able to see you all at all. And I even turned on channel Takoma Park TV and you're not on.
Easy. What do I need to do?
Ms.
What's
Matsui,
happening?
we right now only have the slides up, but we can
I
hear you
can't
very
see any
well.
slides.
Yeah, it's totally high. No, I hear nobody.
Hold
Showing
on.
my volume's totally on, but I don't hear a sound.
Ms. Matsui, we just went through the slides, but if you have a question, we can take your questions.
Yes.
Thank you. But I am
Yeah.
a low income homeowner who lived in Maryland in my home for almost 40 years. In 3 months, it'll be 40 years. I am disabled. I'm 77. My son is disabled. He lives with me. I'm being charged too much for property taxes. And I have friends, I noticed there seems to be a racial vibe to this, that some of the Black people in my area have left more than the white people. And I think maybe it's because as general, Black people don't have as much money for homes. And the homes in Tacoma Park are way too high. And they may go down a little because of the people losing their jobs, unfortunately. But there was a house that went for over $1 million on my block. They made it 3 times as large as it used to be. This is ridiculous, and I don't feel. I want to be in a multiracial, the same kind of area that Tacoma Park prides it on. I like the diversity. That the diversity is leaving. It is leaving, and please do something about it. Thank you, because I can't afford to live here anymore. And my friend up the street, who was a crossing guard for over 50 years, can't afford to live there anymore. It's not right. Thank you.
Ms. Matsui, thank you for sharing your comments. Ryan,
Yep,
looks like we have another
Yep.
couple folks that have raised their hands in the chat.
David Reed is can now unmute.
Mr. Reed, do you have questions or comments? You should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Rob, thank you very much. One, for hosting the discussion this evening. And second, for moving forward in the calendar year, the discussion and the public engagement about the budget. These are things that some have been asking for many years. And we certainly appreciate your responding to those requests. Now, one of the important lessons drawn from last year's budget research was that over the past decade and a half, that's about 15 years, the staff numbers have actually increased by 14 people, all the while that the city's population has increased by less than 10 people. And the area of greatest staff growth has been administration. I guess that's what you've called general government. including most recently the addition of a second deputy city manager, a position that doesn't really exist in Rockville, and to my knowledge, Gaithersburg. Now, one of the logical conclusions that could be drawn from that data is that those new residents may be receiving very personalized attention from the new staff. I rather doubt it. Or one might have the opinion that the efficiency of staff has decreased regularly and significantly over that 15-year period. But I don't want to jump to those conclusions. I've raised this issue at city council meetings several times and never really got an explanation for why this trend. And so the first question I have is, perhaps you could explain that trend. And secondly, would you say, can you confirm that this trend will not continue hereafter? Thank you very much.
Mr. DeSpirito, can you hear us? And did you want to address Mr. Reed's question? Rob, checking again whether or not you can hear us and are able to respond. Okay, Mr. Reed, I will not speak for Mr. DeSpirito. I do recall last year the question was raised and there was quite a bit of public comment about the growth of the FTEs within the city, specifically in the administrative office, which does include general government, which is a mix of the city manager's office, communications, a lot of our internal departments, internally focused departments. And we went through an extensive exercise where year by year, we explained the increases over time. That is something that we can run again as a part of the FY27 budget process to share the specific growth and kind of where that growth was within the city government. You mentioned whether or not Rockville and Gaithersburg had similar structures in the city manager's office. They do, in fact, have either an assistant city manager or a deputy city manager in both Rockville and Gaithersburg. So it is within Maryland and even within Montgomery County a common structure, one that Mr. DeSpirito brought with him from the Rockville to the city of Takoma Park. And there have indeed been some advantages to that structure, which I will leave to Mr. DeSpirito to elaborate on. But ultimately, what I want to leave you with is that we can do another analysis in FY27 explaining the growth over time and whether or not there will be any changes in FTEs in our budget forecast. We did talk about the inclusion of some of the ARPA positions into the general fund, and there was a lengthy discussion between the city manager and the council about that. I would encourage you to review that. I'm sure you've probably already seen it to get the details about why the city manager was proposing that particular adjustment. But beyond that, I do not believe it's Mr. DeSpirito's intent to adjust FTEs in FY27.
A very quick follow-up, if you don't mind, David. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it's not, the issue is not having a assistant city manager. The question is that we've doubled that since the use of the ARPA funds, and none of the other municipalities actually have two or two deputy managers. And the second point is, well, thank you for the research that you all did, because indeed I did raise it, but I don't believe I've ever received a good sharing of that information, David, which would be very much appreciated. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the follow-up, and I will work with Mr. DeSpirito to track down that information and share more broadly. Ryan, do we have any other questions in the chat or any other hands raised?
Yes, I'm going to unmute Randy Gibson.
Okay, and Mr. Gibson, before you continue, I just want to check Mr. DeSpirito's microphone and confirm that he is able to hear and speak in response to the questions. Mr. DeSpirito, can you hear us? Okay. It seems like he's still working on it. Mr. Gibson, you have a question or comment?
Yes, yeah, I do. Again, thanks again, Rob, for the overview um, of the budget process. I just have three short points. The first point, I'll just say the aim of this budget forum was a broader range of residents. I don't think we're well served by having, so we can't see anybody. Um, and I spoke with at least one resident that wanted to come but didn't have a Zoom capabilities herself on her computer. So I would question whether we are getting a broader range. But my 3 points. First, I would like to request that all of the comments made tonight be transcribed and posted to the city website. Not just a video, but transcribed and posted. Is that possible?
I'm not sure, Mr. Gibson, but we will take that into consideration.
Yeah, there is such a thing. I think I've heard of something called AI that could do a reasonably good job. Second, I will state the obvious that budgets are about values, and the city council has a goal of fiscally sustainable government, but our budgets do not reflect that value, in my opinion. Fiscally responsible for whom is my question, and it's certainly not those many homeowners and renters on fixed incomes. For too many years, we've failed to recognize that the perpetual growth, which David Reed referred to, of city staff, infrastructure, and services has cost beyond our city dollars. We are failing our neighbors and the economic diversity that we claim to cherish. Another maintenance of effort budget would fail us again. And my third point, I am asking the city council to do its job and require that the city manager propose a constant yield budget, one in which next year's tax rate generates the same amount of revenue as this year. This budget would force the staff and council to focus on needs first, not wants, thereby providing a baseline from which any increases should and may be considered. And yes, there are many ways to save money. How about cutting the 3 positions previously funded to administer ARPA through federal funds? And Mr. Reed referred to one of those positions, which is the second deputy city manager, but there's a total of 3 FTEs involved. And so I thank you for this opportunity. I wish it were in person or in a hybrid form, but my hope is that you will honor our values and current residents through fiscal discipline. I think that's what's needed. Thank you.
David, you are muted.
Thank you, Z. Ryan, the next attendee with a question.
Milford Sprecher.
Hello. I thank you for putting this presentation together. I found it very illuminating. Just one comment. The general government revenues, it's a big bucket, and it really wasn't broken out in terms of where those funds are coming from. It'd be nice to see exactly where those general government funds are coming from. But my second point is looking at the revenue outlook. That wasn't a particularly cheerful outlook, and what it pointed out to me was that it sounds like we need to be taking a very close look at our expenditures because the revenue outlook is rather uncertain, and I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the economy, but there's some rather ominous signs out there about the economy and unemployment increasing and that kind of thing. So uh, that's the message that I got from the presentation. So I hope that's something that you're all taking into consideration.
Thank you for your comments. And yes, it's something that we've been thinking about since I'd say FY26. If you were able to follow our FY26 budget at all, in an unprecedented way, we included some assigned reserves to account for some of the unknowns coming into that budget season. One of them was the expected or potential decline in income taxes, among some other concerns related to federal grants and even some state grants. And so as we enter into FY27, those concerns remain at the top of our mind. And as always, we will have a keen eye toward expenditures. This year, we're expecting a continuity of service budget. Mr. Gibson just referenced a maintenance of effort budget, practically the same thing. And so we are not looking to expand our services or our programs significantly in this coming fiscal year. Again, being mindful of the expenditures and the potential realities of our revenues. So thank you for the question. Thank you for the comment, and we will certainly take that into consideration. Ryan, if we could move on to the next question, please.
Yes, that would be Randy Marks.
Hi. Well, the first reason I raised my hand was to say the chat's not working, but now Jesse's said that. I'm curious how many attendees we have, and I have a substantive question about the last year. I think more than once I asked Rob for an analysis of the services that we provide on behalf of the county in terms of the cost of providing the services and the rebates. And Rob, I believe, several times has agreed to provide it, but that has not happened yet. And I would like a commitment from you that we're going to get that.
I'd like to understand the request a little bit better. So when you say the analysis of services and rebates, are you referring to tax duplication?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, we can certainly provide you with the tax duplication revenue that we receive for the past several years. For most of the areas in which we receive tax duplication dollars, it's fairly consistent from year to year. If we see an increase, it's usually marginal. So we can, and I believe we included some of those estimates in our FY27 forecast, but we can certainly provide it retroactively.
Okay, I didn't, if you could let us know where that is in the forecast, because I'm not sure I looked at that document, but I'd be happy to look at it. But I don't think we can have an intelligent discussion about city services unless we know how much extra we're paying for services. So I appreciate your response. Also, Jesse posted that there are 29 attendees on the call. It may not be Jesse, it's Jesse's, might be Ryan. But anyway, whoever did it, thank you. And I want to associate myself with the previous remarks about the cost of city services and overhead, etc. And it is Jesse that I thanked, and it was her that posted. So thank you. I think the previous comments have been helpful and represent the views of a lot of people in the city.
Okay, thank you again for your comments. I want to pause for just a moment and check with Mr. DeSpirito and see, Rob, if you could hear us and if we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you now. My profound apologies for IT did a wonderful job of getting me in through some technical difficulties that very unfortunately happened. So yes, I'm able to be in now.
Okay, Rob, I will turn the management of the discussion over to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next caller, please.
Yes, next caller is Paul Hubner. 1 second, Paul.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you.
Great.
Yes, sir.
So this is a question actually for Rob. So in your presentation letter in the FY25 adopted budget, you said on page 2, I quote, "My staff and I will work over the next year to develop strategies for returning the city to a more solid and sustainable financial footing, relying less on excess reserves." My question, please inform us, the residents, of the exact actions, results of that, and that you have been taken, the results, the actions and the results that have been taken to fulfill that promise and supply the percent savings and dollar value and how that has lessened the tax burden on residents?
Well, thank you, Paul, for the question, and that's certainly a multi-part question. I think some of that we can follow up with you, and some of that just generally, we find ourselves in a situation, and David alluded to it with respect to needing mayor and council seeing the need for having some additional reserves, given the uncertainty in the times that this past budget, with the layoffs and the uncertainty around income tax and other forms of revenue to the city, grants and other things, we felt collectively that it was prudent to have a relatively higher level of assigned and unassigned reserves at the ready to be conservative financially and protect city services. So that became more of an emphasis this year that was there much more than the prior fiscal year. Beyond that, I would just say that my staff, which is very talented, do try to manage and do manage with a great deal of efficiency where they can. We're very aggressive in pursuing grants, and I think we've had an unprecedented amount of outside money that comes in. Staff works very closely with the mayor and council and MML, and also our state D20 legislative delegation to try to not only seek additional funds for the city, which have come in for CIP projects and other things, but also to try to advocate for, I mentioned earlier, preservation of the highway user revenue monies from the state. There's also monies that come to the police department. There's a supplemental appropriations, special appropriations for police program that the state shares money with police departments throughout the state. And we are working hard to advocate that there is not a decrease in those type of revenues that come to help support. And all of that offsets need for general fund money, particularly from the real property tax. So those are all efforts to try to keep the property tax reliance as low as we can. We have had the last 2 years, we did not recommend an increase in the rate, even though inflationary costs and a lot of expenses beyond our control have continued to rise and been something that we need to contend with as we provide the services that the mayor and council and the community have desired and needed. So all of those are ways that we are working in that direction, and we'll continue to do our best.
Well, I appreciate that answer, but in light of the fact, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in 26, there was a deficit, an excess of expenditures over revenue of $2.1 million, and you're proposing an increased expenditure over revenue of $2.47 million this year. And what you also did was take $1.1 million in your proposal to give to the ERR. Now, a couple of places that are easy to save money: cut down on the cars, transfer dispatch to the county like they do in Rockville, like they do in Gaithersburg, share the services, and try to trim the sales. I know 5 people on my block were laid off this up until 2 days ago, and I know 3 people that lost their jobs to Doge. This is real. I mentioned this at the council last year. There would be a decrease in revenue from income taxes because people were under severe duress. And I honestly, as much as I'd like to see it, I see no money coming from the feds. If Trump could, he would just squash us like a bug. So the nature of my question was, in light of all these massive expenditures and what looks on paper, now I know the council votes for this, but looks like a deficit to me, and the way it was made up last year was by excess revenue from income taxes. And I don't think you're going to get that this year. There was $1.2 million in excess revenue last year from income taxes, and I don't see any way you're going to get that this year. And I certainly don't think we're going to get any help from the state that's $3 billion in the hole, and the feds who aren't going to give anything to any blue state. I wish you the best. Maybe you'll get some taxing revenue. And if you want more revenue, tax all the developers that are putting the pop tops in the city and increasing property values from 700 to 1.2 million. There's your money. And I appreciate the effort that you're making. I don't think you're in an easy seat, and nobody said it was going to be easy, but I'm pulling for you because it happens to be where I live, and we all want the city to be successful, but we've got to live within our means. There's not that many people, and many are really suffering, and I'm hoping to speak for some of them and myself. And I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your attention, and we look forward to the specific examples of cuts and transfers that can be made by city government to ameliorate the incredible burden that we pay. If you go to to Google right now, Takoma Park housing costs are 85% above the national average. This is real money, and these are real people. Please look out for them, and thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you sincerely, Paul, for your comments. And your love and passion for this community really comes through. I know the mayor and council and I, my staff, we all can understand that, and we appreciate it. And there's much of what you've just said that I think we would agree with in terms of what we're facing in terms of some of the challenges. I just want to reemphasize that this is, even though we are showing some baseline projection, my team and I have not yet begun to put together next year's budget. So we have a number of different ways that we can try and tackle things like the proposed level of unassigned reserves and other issues that you rose. I'd like to try and, again, our point today is to listen and to try and absorb this feedback and do our best in putting together a balanced budget for the community. It's got to be balanced against the level of services that people want and need. It's we are blessed with a wide array of services that provide a great quality of life to this community. And cuts and so forth, if they're severe, ultimately there may need to be some policy conversations about if there's a look at services. But the direction that the staff had from the resolution last year in the budget was to, in essence, maintain the level of services as economically as we can, to not raise the tax rate, which we did not. And we try to work within the parameters that we're given, but we also try to be creative and resourceful. And we know that we can get some wonderful ideas from our residents, such as yourself. So thank you.
Tom Gagliardo.
Rob, thanks for doing this. Hope you're doing well. Let's clarify a couple of things. Randy Gibson spoke of the need to see a constant yield budget. That doesn't mean that you have to implement the constant yield budget, but preparing it allows a discussion to emerge as to what, if we need to cut, or if we want to cut, what the priorities would be. David Reed mentioned overstaffing. There are lots of things that need to be looked at, in my opinion. Several people have mentioned reassessing the services provided by the city in lieu of the county. So what services might properly, as a matter of efficiency, go back to the county, not a reduction in services, not a reduction in personnel in this instance, but rather allowing the county allowing the county to pay the true cost. I want to clarify what you said several times about the tax rate. As you know, Arthur David Olson has said repeatedly at council meetings, people do not pay tax rates, they pay taxes. And by holding the tax rate steady, we have nonetheless paid increased taxes simply because the appraised value of our houses go up. You need to be candid with the community. What is the tax increase, not what is the tax rate increase? Another thing I would like to point out is that I've talked to several people who say, let me just finish, Rob, if I may, or go ahead.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to try to answer one of your questions while I was.
All right, let me make these points quickly, because I don't
Sure.
think they need to be, one of them needs to be particularly responded to, but the other doesn't. I've talked to several people who live in modest homes who have made no changes to their homes, but their assessment goes up very rapidly because the rest of the neighborhood is improving. All right, drive down Ritchie, drive down Geneva, and you will see that there are many small homes. They've been owned by the same family for more than a single generation. And then you can see in that same neighborhood, on those same streets, new construction and small houses having been expanded to larger houses. People in those small houses whose families have lived there for generations are getting socked with the increased assessments and increased taxes. Final point is a question. Would you share with us, please, how much was spent on replacing police vehicles, both the current year, FY26, and what's projected for FY27? And I appreciate your doing this. I look forward to your answer.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate your questions and your comments. I understand. I think we all do understand that that's what we discussed. I wanted to take some time and did in my initial comments about how assessments work and the fact that the valuations as they go up even without changing the tax rate, you're correct. The actual amount of dollars that people pay increases from year to year based on the increased valuation of their property. I mentioned it in my comments and also in two of the charts I had. The historical assessed value of real property over time illustrates how the values of homes have gone up. But that also illustrates that folks have been paying more, okay, as a result of that. And likewise, the historical general fund revenues for real property, that chart that we provided at the outset here indicates the amount of money that accrues, even when the rate is constant. The rate is constant, but additional revenue is collected because of that evaluation that you referred to. So I think we're in agreement on the concept. You're absolutely correct. And I understand the sentiment that you and others have expressed about the hardship that befalls folks, particularly seniors and those on fixed incomes, when their true property bill goes up each year, even though the rate doesn't. We are cognizant of that, and we're sensitive to that. We want to see what we can do. Again, this is early in the process, and we're going to take all of this feedback and try to address it in the budget. The next thing is, you'd mentioned about police vehicles. I mean, I don't have those numbers handy in front of me. We have vehicles from a variety of different departments that reach the end of the useful life and need to be replaced. We do have a schedule. It's all public information. Our ERR, we have criteria, have folks that review this every single year to try to really only replace the equipment and the vehicles that really need to. Big part of one of the things that's important for us, for me as a manager to keep in mind is, the safety of city employees. Sometimes equipment can get to the stage where it is literally not safe for employees to use. And that's why there needs to be a consideration of that in addition to age and condition and repair history. All of these things are taken into consideration. And frankly, I presented in last year's budget a lower number of vehicles than what our ERR committee had recommended based on criteria. So we'll continue to try to be conservative that way, but there's always going to be, with the number of services and the type of services we provide, a need to replace a certain number of those anyway. And so, but we'll try to be mindful of the points that we make, and I appreciate your comments very much.
All right, next is Shayna. In just 1 second. Okay, Shayna, you should be able to talk now.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Mr. DeSpirito, for this and for all the other input that we have to come. I appreciate the opportunity. I just wanted to say, one of my concerns as a mom and also as someone who served as the executive director for Lunch and Learn this summer, I see more and more kids walking, more and more kids biking. I had kids biking from New Hampshire Avenue over to Piney Branch Elementary School, which on one hand was heartwarming and on the other hand was horrifying, just because I know what they have to go through in order to get from point A to point B and back again. And so I'm just hoping that, especially with the deaths that we have seen recently on streets in Montgomery County to pedestrians, that we will not completely turn our back to some of the projects that the city has planned, even if it's some sort of marginal amount of money that keeps us sort of, putting along. My family, and I would say a lot of the kids of Takoma Park, would really appreciate that.
Thank you very, very sincerely for those comments. That's a great thought.
I am going to pull from the chat. By the way, the chat is now working. So if there's any comments that you want to leave there, you can post it in the chat. And from Catherine Tunis, the point was valuations determined by the state are not what homes are worth. The state makes an assessment based on perfect condition, bigger, upgraded homes that have sold recently. The assessments are not based on a 40-year-old kitchen or roof. The state assessors have even argued with homeowners who want to appeal their assessment, saying, well, why don't you upgrade your property? That is not their place. They are bullying homeowners. If the city can help advocate for homeowners who are happy with their little houses, that would be great.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. So noted.
Back to the hands that are raised. I have Susan Katz Miller.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate a lot of the comments that have been made, but a lot of them weren't made in a questioning format. So I'm going to ask this as a direct question. Why would the FTEs that were added with ARPA funding be made permanent? That's my question. And then also, if that were or is the case, when would it be discussed at council? Because I haven't heard it being discussed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your question. Appreciate that. Yes, that would be addressed in response to what I end up proposing in the proposed budget in March. So we are listening now, and we are trying to take into consideration the things that are being said. And, I wasn't personally working here when ARPA first began and the initial positions were created, but I do hear what folks are saying, and we want to try and see what we can do to address concerns.
We have another question from the chat. Have the survey results been tabulated? And that is from Tom Gagliardo.
We are making a presentation Wednesday evening on both the community budget survey outcome as well as the city council budget survey. So we'll be walking folks through some analysis of the results of that. We look forward to that conversation.
I do not see any more hands or questions in the chat at this time.
I once again want to apologize for the technical issues that unexpectedly arose around doing this meeting. we tried to do some special outreach to folks in the community that have not traditionally participated in meetings like this. The thought was that if we could do a virtual meeting, and we did a lot of, we did some direct outreach to the multifamily buildings and various parts of the community where residents have not traditionally engaged in these conversations. And we felt that in part because some folks are uncomfortable coming down to a government building, that it might be best to try this approach. You know, it's exploratory. We want to see how it worked. Technical glitches aside, we were hopeful that even if folks aren't asking questions, that they might be tuned in. We're hopefully reaching some people who haven't been part of the conversation previously.
Paul Humner has his hand raised.
Yes, hey, Paul.
Has there been any discussion at the council or within staff about the runaway costs? And when Ref Tellis made his report, he proposed 4 budgets. Okay, status quo, constant yield, recommended budget, and recommended budget minus capital improvement projects. Are you all aware of that? You, Rob, and the other gentleman. Is David still here? So what I'm wondering, has the staff discussed the potential to do such a similar dynamic where there's a constant yield budget proposal, a proposed budget from the staff recommends, and a constant yield minus CIP? Because the sinkhole for city government is the CIP, the ERR, and the multiple communication departments. But once I counted, there are 5 communication departments in different departments within the city. And there's almost $900,000 spent on communication in the police department alone. These numbers are just astounding when people look at them. And there's got to be some savings here. And I'm wondering if the staff is going to present different budget proposals based upon different metrics: constant yield, staff proposed, status quo, and constant yield minus CIP. That's what Ref Tellis proposed, and that seems like a potential path that we could pursue.
Yeah, I believe Ref Tellis had, I believe you're referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, when they did revenue forecasts for the city. I think it was 2 years ago. And they did run some different scenarios. The good news is that we're going to be hearing from Ref Tellis again very soon as this Wednesday night, where I have asked them to refresh revenue scenarios, including some of the types of scenarios that you're talking about. So that will at least give us some general idea of what the picture might look like, not just next year, by 27, but in multiple years, maybe going up to 5 years or beyond, under different scenarios. That all can be a fair conversation for the mayor council and the community to ultimately provide direction. What are some uses that we doing full blown? I don't believe Thomas had suggested doing 3 or 4 full budget proposals to the council. All very, but what we try to do is to a very detailed proposal to the community and the council. So we need to get some of that kind of feedback very early on. That's why we're doing this kind of conversation and having this tell us back in, not only in this week, but they'll be back again shortly after the new year to do follow-up conversation, council to continue to do analysis. And I think we should look at different scenarios where revenue is concerned. And that
Your speaker was off for like 3 minutes, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah.
Correct, Ryan?
Yeah, Rob, can you go back a little bit? You were a little garbled.
Also, Rob, if you excuse for 1 minute, Ryan, please mute everybody when one person is speaking.
I'm sorry, I'm still having audio problems at this end. Apologize for that. So, but thank you for the suggestions. And again, the main point I was trying to make is that we will be providing some different scenarios for the mayor council and the public to consider with respect to the tax rate, what that would mean, not just near term, but long term. And those conversations can help inform an ultimate budget proposal in the spring.
Hey, Rob, I have a couple of things in the chat. Let me just get to the top here. Statement from Randy Marks saying, I strongly favor Zoom meetings and hope for future meetings like this one that are hybrid, in person and Zoom. Even apart from immigration enforcement issues, people with disabilities or child care issues are only able to attend Zoom. WACO has moved to Zoom meetings. To be sure, we lose the in-person, but I think it helps with attendance. And then from Ambrose Agassi, how and when will we have the full document, as the current presentation does not have enough information? Mean all details of the revenues, sources, and expenditures.
Well, we have an adopted FY26 budget that the mayor and council approved in mid-May. That's the existing budget. That's extremely detailed. Right now, we are just in the very early stages of putting together, on the staff side, a proposal for mayor and council and the community's consideration for the next year, FY27. That document will be delivered per the council approved budget calendar in March of next year. That's when the detailed proposal will be publicly released, and there will be multiple public hearings and work sessions with the mayor and council over the span of March and April and into May, where all of that detail can be discussed.
Also from the chat, Shayna has said, looking for clarification. Excuse me. While Mr. Fox served as city manager, Mrs. Grisby and Mr. Clark served as deputy city manager. Is this the first time we've had two deputy city managers? Thanks.
My understanding is that's correct, that a few years back, there were two deputy city managers.
Another question from Paul Hubner. Are there any leftover reserves? I believe that's supposed to say reserves. Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but are there any leftover reserves in FY26?
In FY26?
Unassigned reserves.
Unassigned reserve. Yes, in the adopted budget, we still have reserves. And we have also the assigned reserves, where there's approximately 3 million that was set aside for a number of different purposes, like contingency for income tax coming in, revenue coming in lower based on what's been going on in the federal government. Also potential that any federal grants could be clawed back, like any remaining ARPA dollars or CDBG funds or other grants. So we try to have some buffer for that. And also if the revenue from the red light camera fund came in lower than we had projected, we tried to have a buffer for that as well. So we do have what amounts to reserves in the current fiscal year budget. Yes.
Rob, if I may, this is Ron from Finance.
Sure, please do.
In our adopted budget for fiscal year 2026, we're showing an unassigned reserve of 5.4 million.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate the question too.
We have one question, and I think it looks like a follow-up. Was there a city manager when there were two acting deputies? And then Susan Katz Miller said, that was from Tom Gagliardo. Susan Katz Miller said there were two interim deputy city managers at that point because there was no city manager.
Mm-hmm.
And Daryl has raised her hand.
Hey, Daryl.
I don't know how far back you want to go, but when Bev Habita was the city manager, we also had two deputy city managers, Wayne Hobbs and Nancy Griffith. Anyway, that's historically there have been two city managers in addition to a city manager. multiple times throughout the past 30 years.
I appreciate your historical perspective. I know because you are a long time and super valued employee, you know, you've got that long view. So thank you for providing that. I'll also share that prior to ARPA funds coming, there were 4 FTEs in the city manager's office. Presently, there are 4 FTEs in the city manager's office. The way that that was achieved with the second deputy is that another position was eliminated, and that was a policy analyst position that was vacant, and that FTE was fully in the general fund and was unfunded, eliminated. And so the number of FTEs in the city manager's office has not changed.
Jesse.
Yes, Jesse.
Hi, thank you. Just wanted to mention also before Suzanne Ludlow was a deputy city manager, she was third. So there was a city manager, a deputy, and then there was Suzanne Ludlow, and her title was community and government liaison. So she essentially functioned as a third, as a second deputy. I'll just share that little bit of history as well. And then eventually she became the deputy and then the city manager. So when she became deputy, then there was not a second, essentially, there was not a second deputy city manager at that point. From that point on, there was just the single deputy, and that was Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse, for that.
One more question in the chat.
Sure.
Again, from Paul Humner, can any of the $3 million be carried forward to reduce FY27 taxes?
Yes, if whatever the balance is of the 3 million that's been set aside as assigned reserve in the current FY26 budget is unexpended, that ultimately can become part of the final fund balance for the city when the city closes out its books following the end of the fiscal year and June 30th of next year. So technically, yes, we are hopeful that we don't have to tap that reserve, but I think the council acted with an abundance of caution in terms of trying to understand some of the dynamics at play with revenues this fiscal year and created that assigned reserve at staff's suggestion. And we also had adopted a budget that met the council's 17% unassigned reserve policy goal.
At this time, I don't have any additional hands or questions in the chat.
I really appreciated the comments and the questions, and we have some follow-up that we'll do. Want to sincerely thank everybody that's participated this evening. You know, your passion for this community has really come through sincerely, and we admire that. I admire that. I think the community needs to be made up of folks like yourselves. And I just want you to know that the city staff here is extremely dedicated to serving residents such as yourself and trying to provide the best services at the most efficient cost. And we really do try to listen and learn. We try to do better. We're not perfect by any means, but I think continuous improvement is something that we seek in terms of working with the community. We'd like to welcome other ideas to engage, particularly populations that are vulnerable and haven't traditionally engaged with the city. And we look forward to all the coming opportunities for you to participate with us as we actually have something for you to react to, which would be a proposed budget in the spring. And your feedback at that time will be essential. So thank you again. You're to be congratulated And really appreciate you making some time out of your busy schedules to be with us. It really honors us for you to be here.
Hey Rob, one last question I think is a good touching point to kind of end on here.
Sure.
Can residents follow up with you with any further questions, or what might be a way for residents to follow up?
I would welcome that. Absolutely. Pretty easy to find, but either sending me an email or calling me. Anybody who'd like to call me on my work cell phone, you're welcome to 240-856-1305. That's my cell phone. So please, you're welcome to. I'd be happy to meet with folks. Met with a number of the individuals that have been on the meeting this evening. And I really embrace the opportunity to have dialogue with you. So let's keep the conversation going. Feel free to reach out to me directly, and we'll try to be as responsive as we can. And we do care about what you said. Thank you. All enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Rob.